Hi, Kevin.
Hello, how are you?
Good, man. You were busy, huh? Yesterday.
Yeah, I finally got some things done at least, yes.
A lot. Well, at least on our side for us. Um, Let me stop my video. There we go. I just got my dog out for a walk. We've got a heat wave coming on.
Oh no.
Yeah. And it's the first one we've had. It's been pretty cold here up until about 2 weeks ago, but this week, I think on Friday it's going to get up to about 105. And my son's got a job at the golf course where he drives around in an open golf cart without a roof, and
Oh,
he helps with the maintenance and the greens and stuff like that while he's on vacation. And he is visiting his girlfriend this weekend in San Diego, so he took the right weekend to go away.
yes, he did. Yes, he did.
uh, yeah. Costa, hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I've got Kevin Wilkinson on the line. You have a few little notes about him, and I just learned Kevin confirmed his flights to Hanover for our Discovery Days. So you guys will get to meet, and he's from the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, looking to develop some units there. So he unfortunately didn't make an earlier founder call, and now that he's coming, I thought it would be helpful for both of you to meet. And Kevin, generally Costa, I know this is just, we've got a one-on-one call today, which I think is beneficial sometimes because you get to answer all the questions, and we usually don't get through all of them anyway. But maybe Costa, do you want to have Costa just tell you a little bit about his background, how he started the business? And
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah, Kevin, good to meet you. So normally what we do is when we have a larger group, I'll do a pretty extended background of the company, and then we'll do Q&A until I'm out of time. I've got plenty of time today, so we can do as many questions as you want, but I won't go super deep into my background. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that have more longer versions of the background story, but
Okay.
the long and the short of it is we built an oil change only business that was predicated on the oil change only experience being the service that the end consumer wanted. And I started the business in 2014 while I was still working at T. Rowe Price, and I was looking for businesses that I felt I could run while still in my career, because I really enjoyed my career in finance. I had a really nice job at T. Rowe Price in Baltimore, and I just thought I needed to scratch that entrepreneurial itch and just have like a side business. And so there was a older couple out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, that was trying to wind down their business, and I was able to take it over for basically very little money and a lot of sweat equity. And it gave me the canvas to try to shape the business the way that I wanted to see it. And so I spent a lot of time on that first location. I was still working at T. Rowe for quite a while, actually. And from my desk, I would kind of map out the things that I thought the industry was lacking. And I thought our industry had some credibility issues. I thought our industry had some service issues. And I thought the staffing model was upside down. And so I went into the Harrisburg location with this idea of how I wanted to run this business. And then we opened a second store in Dillsburg, Pennsylvania to validate that model. And it really all revolved around, first and foremost, the oil change only model, but secondly, the no high pressure upselling model. And those were what I thought were the two biggest sticking points in the industry. And part of the reason our industry moved away from the oil change only model was due to the expense of the facilities that it took to do these services. And you get to the point where you're just not going to be able to do enough oil changes to be able to cover a $15,000 a month rent or mortgage. And so it became not practical to be an oil change only business. But what I was able to do as I climbed up from 2 locations to 5 to 10 to 15 was just make sure that my leases were where they needed to be, make sure that my staffing model was where it needed to be, make sure that the flow of the staff was where it needed to be so that we could do more cars with less people, less SKUs, less moving parts. Let's not have to carry a large inventory. Let's not have to carry a large equipment list, and really just bring the business back to how it originated, which was as an oil change only business, which I think is what the consumer wanted. So fast forward to 2020, 2021, I reached out to several franchise groups to make sure that we franchise this thing the right way, make sure that we had all the right infrastructure in place. Settled with the Friend Devco folks because they had some experience in the automotive space. And we've had a lot of success in selling territories and getting stores open, I think a lot better than our peers, largely because of the team that we've put together to be able to scale this business. And it's been a really enjoyable ride, because I think everyone that has joined our team, whether through vendor relationships or, you know, the Friend Devco folks, everyone has their own oil change story. It seems like everyone's had their incident that makes them relate to the model that we're trying to do. And then it just becomes about, okay, how do we get the franchisees into our system, get them open, and make sure that they buy into the long-term vision that the oil change only model is, you know, what the consumer wants, because it is an interval-based business and there is this ramp-up period. And so that's always been an important part of the conversation as well. Right. So that, I mean, that's really it. That's a 30-second Spark Notes version, but happy to take questions in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Great intro. Thank you. I guess one of the things I was thinking about, and especially when comparing, I've been looking at other quick oil change, and just also on the clarity when you say oil change only, from the standpoint of it, there are no air filters or any of that, right? As far as what's
no. We still have a variety of ancillary products and services that add to ticket average. We're not going to stop someone from doing some of these other common maintenance items. But what we don't want to do, we have 3 main KPIs in our business, and that's car count, ticket average, and bay time. And so and then you can include gross revenue if you want, but if you multiply car count by ticket average, you get gross revenue. But bay time is important to us because we want this to be the least amount of impact on the consumer's day as possible. We're not trying to be something we're not. We're not trying to, you know, we don't want to, some of the other players in our space are trying to open up to be this holistic approach, but you know, I can tell you from talking to customers, they don't want a quick oil change place changing their brakes. They just don't trust it. There's a credibility issue there. Absolutely. And so I'd rather be really good at what we do, focus on what we think the consumer wants, which is why we're not tied to branded oil, because in the quick lube space, it is of my opinion that brand doesn't move the needle for the quick lube consumer. And then anything that doesn't add on to bay time, whether it's something as simple as wiper blades, fuel injector cleaners, pop and pour products, engine cleaners, things like that, we're more than happy to have our franchisees and some of our successful franchisees like in Holland, Michigan, they've already created such credibility within their community that when they do sell a product, the conversion rate is higher. And because the conversion rate is higher, you're probably making the same amount of sales as the competitor who throws everything at the wall and hopes 7 out of 10 sales sticks. But if they, you know, offer 10 out of 10 people a service and only 3 convert, and we offer 5 out of 10 people a service and 4 convert, then we're actually coming out ahead.
Yeah. From the branded standpoint, do you know how much of the product that you sell is actually the private label?
Yeah, our bulk oil is, depending on who you end up using as your distributor, because we do not mandate oil distributors. So we actually have a handful of franchisees that technically do sell a branded oil. But we have a national partnership with a company called Relodyne, and their private label product is called Duramax, which is convenient for them because a lot of people think of the diesel engine when they think of Duramax. So it has some brand equity. But to us, we don't actively promote the Duramax brand. We don't promote, that as part of our sales pitch. We just call it our oil change offering.
Okay.
And so you have 4 main SKUs that are going to be probably 90% of your oil changes, and that's going to be 530 synthetic blend, 520 synthetic blend, and then you have full synthetic 020 and full synthetic 530, and then the other 10% is going to be your 1030s, 1540s, and some people want 520 full synthetic, and then there's some other smaller weights that we don't carry in bulk. We would carry them in packaged product, like I don't know if you've ever seen the bag in a box. It's like, boxed wine. You can get motor oil in a box now.
I'm actually seeing that at Walmart now, which was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, they do like a half version of it, interestingly enough. And I would actually, there's a time, because Walmart is the largest purchaser of Mobil 1 oil in the entire world. And so Mobil 1 distributors, there was a time during this price craziness that we've had in our industry where Mobil 1 was cheaper to get at Walmart at retail level than it was to get it directly from a Mobil 1 distributor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the numbers that I've looked at, excuse me, it looks like you have a cost advantage from the standpoint of your oil and filter versus competitor, but that's difficult to actually ferret out from the standpoint of all the numbers that are included in there. Do you think that's true from the standpoint of buying your own, from your distribution model, that you have an advantage on the cost perspective, or you think that's even playing field?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin, because the logistics of lubricants is really difficult. So even national companies like Shell and Mobil, they don't do their own distribution of lubricants. Oftentimes they just, motor oil at the end of the day is like a recipe for food, and they'll send it to a blender, whether it's in Indiana or Bensalem, Pennsylvania, and they say, okay, here's our recipe, make our oil. And then the blenders then send it to the distributors like a Relodyne or a PetroChoice or, any of these. And then they, disperse the product. And so there's no economy of scale when it comes to the lubricant space. But what Relodyne is attempting to do, and they're one of probably 2 distributors in the country, is create a national system where you can have uniform pricing, whether you're west of the Rockies or east of the Mississippi. And so I do believe we have a competitive advantage by having that partnership with them, because they are in the process of trying to be basically the first national lubricants distributor to have warehouses in all the strategic parts of the country. The traditional model, say you're a Chevron customer, and Chevron sells licensing rights to Joe Schmo's oil company in Oklahoma City, and then the licensing rights for Wichita, Kansas is Bing Bong LLC, and they control the pricing because they, so you could have a location in Wichita, you could have a location in Oklahoma City, but you might get 2 different pricing because Chevron sold those licenses to different oil companies, and they have to make their margin on the actual distribution of the product. And so by dealing with a Relodyne and having that master account, they have the purchasing power to tell sub-distributors, hey, we sell you this much oil. If on this account you have to eat a few cents, you're going to eat it. And in the past, that has traditionally led to smaller distributors just saying, okay, I'm not going to sell Chevron then, right? I'm just going to sell Quaker State, whatever. But there's been such consolidation. The smaller distributors don't have that power to just walk away from a Relodyne or a Mobil, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. Is there any exclusivity in there for Costa?
No, Relodyne, and I don't think we would want that either. You want that flexibility because our products are tied to the commodities market. And so you don't want to be, it goes both ways as well. But Relodyne, they also service Take 5, which was a relatively new phenomenon for them because Take 5 had been associated with Castrol for 30 years. And then they announced that they made a partnership with Relodyne. And so when I moved our partnership from Petro Choice to Relodyne, one of the first things I said to the national account rep is like, I'm not going to play, redheaded stepchild to Take 5. We need to be treated the same. Like, and I don't want, like, if I ever sense that we're, being taken second place, then I'll walk away. And so thus far, they've done a good job.
Okay. Let me add one thing, some color to that may be helpful, Kevin. Costa, I don't know if I shared this with you or George did, but I've been working with a gentleman who just purchased the Reno market, George Najar, and he spoke with Take 5 and researched with him, and there were a couple of things that concerned him about the model there. And Costa, I think that Take 5 are actually setting the price, but he said, Michael, I got to pay as a franchisee $25 for a gallon of synthetic oil. He said, it's crazy. So Kevin, what Costa was talking about is he's not setting the price, right? It's what we're trying to do is create the same pricing around the United States. But knowing what that price was that I heard from George, that's extremely high, and that would probably put them at a disadvantage. I'm just looking at their price of the oil change here in Reno, which is not a high price market, and their synthetic is $106 right now. Wow. And that's just that's for 5 quarts.
That's for the first 5 quarts in a spin-on filter. So Take 5 is playing the same game and a different game at the same time, and our cost of 1 gallon of full synthetic right now is $10. And so, a third of what, if that number that George gave is correct, and, I can't say whether it is or not, 25 seems super, super high. But one of the reasons Take 5 has such a high liquidity requirement is they're not so much concerned with that ramp up period for their franchisees. They understand that you might be, having negative cash flow for, that ramp up period. Whereas what I've done is very deliberately attempted to mitigate the ramp up period as much as possible. So your pricing scales based on what your cost is, and your cost of goods, your main cost of goods and services is going to be oil and filters always. And then, so if cost of oil goes up, then obviously you increase your pricing. But in regards to the ramp up period, our competitive advantage is going to be pricing, because we need to get those customers, because this is an established industry now. This is not an industry that's brand new anymore. This industry is turning 40 years old. And so everyone has somewhere that they get their oil change, which means that when you open a store, they're firing whoever it is that did their oil change last, whether it's Pep Boys or Jiffy Lube or whoever. And it's not easy to pull someone away from their oil change provider, because it's one of those services that you get comfortable with. And exactly. So the price advantage is super important, because that's how we get people in the door. And we want to mitigate, because once word of mouth gets out, that's going to help the business, no doubt. But you got to get people in the door first. And so there's only so many ways to do that, especially when you're an emerging brand. It's not like Valvoline plants that big blue V on a sign and people know day one, like that's a 100-year-old brand that sponsors a NASCAR, year in, year out, Mark Martin, et cetera. So, we have different challenges.
Yeah, I ended up driving by the new Oklahoma City franchise that opened there, and I saw the sign basically said 50% off any oil change. So taking what you're saying, I'm guessing that's one of the main strategies of bringing in new customers or bring them over from other competitors based off of that savings. Is that kind of a correct assumption, or is that oversimplified?
No, that's 100% correct. I personally have a belief that there are three things that make people choose where they get their oil change: appearance. I always say atmosphere, experience, and price, right? So atmosphere, do you have a clean facility? Is there trash in the driveway leading up to the building? Is there oil on the building? Is it dark and dingy like the old repair shops of old, where there's a cigarette hanging out the side of the employee's mouth and, cuss words and, all that? Experience. I believe that we provide the best oil change experience in the industry thanks to our flow chart. We didn't do anything, but basically if you've gone by, and I try not to name competitors when I make these kind of comments, but like, you can drive by any of the traditional quick lubes and they'll have, two guys actually doing the work and five guys standing around, sometimes throwing a football or something. And it's like, okay, why do they have so many guys to do this service? And so, we have a flow chart that I've created. It's our own proprietary flow chart that goes through the service step by step. It's also a form of quality assurance with our call out system. And it allows us to do, say, a 25 car day with two guys, whereas some of our competitors, if they're doing 25 to 35 cars a day, they're going to have a staff of 4 or 5.
Okay. From a competitive standpoint, do you see Walmart as one of your competitors, or is Walmart oil change kind of not in that convenience space?
No, they're getting out of the space. Actually, during COVID, they shut down all of their tire and lube shops completely. And they had announced, I can't remember what the date was, maybe August of 2020, they announced that they were not going to reopen a single one of their Canadian tire and lube centers. And so everyone on our side was like crossing our fingers. We're like, please don't open the North America ones. And so they eventually strategically started opening up ones that were very tire volume heavy.
Okay.
And if it happened to have lube center, they continued to do the oil changes. But they closed down a lot of them and they're not opening any new ones. And if they build any new buildings, which Walmart's not really building any new buildings these days,
Right.
they're not including the quick lube side of the business. But we've been in conversations with Walmart because of all their new delivery services and post notes that they are starting to offload a lot of their surplus real estate, and they're looking for opportunities to put things in out parcels and parking lots. And so they have already agreed with us that if it's a facility that does not have a lube center, they're open to putting one of our facilities on their outlot. Walmart, we started that conversation a year ago with our Biloxi, Mississippi franchisee, and Walmart's just got a ton of bureaucracy and it takes a long time to get anything going. So I'm not like super bullish on that relationship, but it kind of indicates your, question.
Right. Very good. From the standpoint of your process and the the claims, like the liability claims, how do you deal with that aspect? And I guess part of my thought process is it's easy to strip a bolt, it's easy to strip out an oil pan, and suddenly you've got a major expense on an inexpensive service.
Yeah, no, that's exactly correct. We actually, so thought process number one is try to avoid as many of these incidents as possible by having things like our ecosystem to make sure that, there's not a double gasket, there's not a, but something like stripping a drain plug, which could actually not even be your fault. You just might be the hot potato that got it.
Exactly.
We have processes in place to try to mitigate those situations. So we internally from my stores, we increased our insurance deductible to be $1,000. It had traditionally been $500. And that basically eliminates, the covering of oil pans and drain plugs. And so, we did that because we got really good at having that conversation with customers. Like if a drain plug gets rounded off, we replace it. That's not a problem. Those are not the problems. The problems are the ones that you mentioned, where the aluminum oil pan gets stripped and the drain plug is spinning in place, and now you have to drop the oil pan and put a new oil pan on.
Exactly.
So, there is a fine line between trying to give the best customer service as possible, but also being reasonable and telling a customer, like, this is not on us, especially when it comes to like skid plates or things like that. And so we do draw hard lines when we have to, and it's not always fun because sometimes it's, not your fault.
Exactly. That was actually the scenario I was concerned about. The guy's like, hey, I can't get, I've got an issue with my oil pan. I'll just take it over here and blame it on somebody else, or whatever the case is. And you get those surprises.
Okay. We have an indemnification on the bottom of every receipt that basically says you have to give us an attempt to rectify it before we will even have a conversation about reimbursing for anything. So we had this is a situation I'm dealing with right now in Avon, Ohio, where the canister filters have a gasket, and when you're putting the cap back on, if you pinch the gasket under high pressure, sometimes oil can squirt out, right? So you're supposed to pressure test the gasket. One of our techs overlooked the pressure test, or the pressure test wasn't high enough to show any kind of leak. We sent the customer on his way. He noticed a couple of drops in his driveway and took the car to a competitor of ours. Not a competitor, actually. I don't view full service shops as competition. Took it to some repair shop, and they said, oh, you cracked the filter housing. And so we were like, well, we didn't even get a chance to see if that's true or not. Do you still have the filter housing? And the repair shop says, no, we threw it away. And it's like, well, that's convenient. We don't even have the opportunity to see if it's actually cracked or not, right? The more likely scenario is the pinched gasket scenario.
Right.
And especially because a cracked filter probably would have been a puddle of oil on the ground. Instead, it was just a couple drops. And so, I personally took on that conversation yesterday, where I told the customer, and I was like, hey, I wish you would have brought it back to us. If it was cracked, we would have owned up to it. We would have replaced it, but I can't reimburse you for this guy's bill because it's, this guy could be just making it up. And to the customer's credit, he was like, yeah, he could be. You're right. And he wasn't super thrilled, but at the same time, he at least understood why we told him we drew a hard line.
Right. Understood. Related to that, insurance as far as the employees, is there, especially like the managers, medical insurance, is that part of what you offer? Is there, as far
I didn't offer medical insurance until much, much later on. Obviously you have to have workers' comp. In states like Ohio, it's actually through the state. But in other states, you can get private workers' comp insurance. The medical insurance we got is through our payroll provider, Gusto. And the only reason I did it was because it was integrated with payroll. So I didn't have to lift a finger on compliance. It's handled for me. And it basically, the lowest package is in line with the marketplace. What we found, we don't have a ton of guys. A lot of our employees are younger. They're not, running to get health insurance. But like in some states, our lowest bronze package is a little bit better than whatever the Obamacare era marketplace.
Okay. Yeah, mainly thinking if it gave advantage to the hiring process or any of that. Sounds like it's just
not. We have territory managers. I can think of 2 of them that actually have opted into our healthcare plan. The people using our healthcare plan the most are office employees, not store level employees. A lot of these guys just don't.
Okay. Makes sense. The what was really interesting for me when Costa and your model was really the whole kind of parking lot aspect and putting centers on a parking lot, just from the standpoint of opening up additional real estate opportunities. But as I've gotten more into it, the expense of that, as well as the logistics, seems to put that as not the best path forward. At least in my mind, it seems like your conversions of car washes and those sorts of things are the better approach, mainly from a cost perspective. Wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, when we first launched in 2021, and as we built out the program in 2020, it was a whole different world. And the single bay kiosk on a low ground lease of $1,500 was a lot more plausible. We were able to do it in Menor on the Lake. And then as the economy shifted and things became way too expensive, especially, and really what it came down to not was so much the materials increase, because the building is not expensive at all. What is expensive is trying to find a contractor who will do the project within the budget we need it to be done and it be worth their while. We simultaneously have a bad economy and a great economy somehow, right? We have all these negative leading indicators. We have an inverted yield curve. We have high interest rates, but at the same time, unemployment is so low. And so we have contractors who just don't have the help to be able to take on projects that are less than a certain size. So they're only taking on bigger projects.
Okay.
And that puts us at a competitive disadvantage. It's not something I've talked about a ton, but that's what we face right now. Is our model does have a delta where, like, if we start going above it, then the store needs to really outperform in order for it to make sense. But for our model, we need, our ho-hum stores to also make sense.
Right.
And it really doesn't work when a 800 square foot building becomes $700,000.
Right.
That it goes back to the very first part of this conversation. Why are we able to do oil changes only? Is because we're building a $400,000 quick lube facility, and that hasn't been done since the 80s.
Yep.
Texas makes all their building contracts publicly available. The least expensive Take 5 I've seen built in Texas in Harris County was $850,000 for a 2-bay.
Wow.
The average Take 5 is being built for north of $1 million.
Wow. Okay. The other part I was interested in is kind of the steps of going through and kind of the franchise help as far as getting up and running. But I'm thinking that may be more of a discovery day type of experience anyway, versus.
Yeah, you can meet our support team here, and we'll talk about the flow of once you come in, from your welcome call to onboarding to site selection to signing a lease to whatever the construction situation is, whether it's a conversion or construction. We'll go over all of that.
Okay, sounds good. No, I think I've asked the majority of my questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, Kevin, well, great questions. I think for us, and certainly I know for Costa, someone coming on a call and asking questions to the depth you did, makes a good business owner. Trying to feel out all of those things, and having a bigger perspective of the market is good. So yeah, and I think your comments about the build cost, etc., is also very prudent. So anyway, well, Costa, thank you for doing the call again. I appreciate your time, and we'll I haven't seen you in a few months, so I'm looking forward to the Discovery Days starting up again, and it'll be a lot of fun. So
that's good. Anyway. See you soon, Michael. Good to meet you, Kevin.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, see you later.
All right, bye-bye.